Hello students, hope you all are doing fine. So let's start our very first chapter of the course, that is power sharing. In this chapter, we will be discussing about how in a democratic nation power does not concentrate in just one organ of the government. It needs an arrangement of power sharing where one organ can keep a check on the other, and what are the correct forms of power sharing. With the examples of Belgium and Sri Lanka, we will understand how it's to be practiced and also the correct method. And at last, we will know what are the different forms of power sharing. So let's start. First of all, we'll need to know that what is power sharing. Now, the power we are talking about here is the power of the government of a nation. If this power is just concentrated within a particular organ, then it might let the government become arbitrary or tyrannical in nature, which can create situations of injustice to the people or the citizens of a nation, specifically in a democratic nation. Thus, power sharing is a division of power along with the responsibilities, and not just power, among different organs and levels of government. It is a powerful strategy which can resolve any disputes within a country over exercising of power and can unite the diversities. To understand how democracies handle demands for power sharing, we will now focus on the two stories of Belgium and then Sri Lanka. Belgium is a small nation in Europe with its capital in Brussels. It even shares its border with France, the Netherlands, Germany, and Luxembourg. From this very view of the map, we understand that it has a very diverse form of communities throughout the nation. So, the orange shaded area is the Brussels capital region, and the Wallon, which is a red shaded area, is a French speaking community region. The yellow is a Flemish region with the Dutch speaking community, and the red and blue shaded area is the German speaking. From this, we get to know that it has a very complex ethnic composition. So, now what is ethnic? Ethnic is a social division based on shared culture. So as we can see here that 59% of the Dutch speaking population lives in the Flemish region and 40% of the French speaking lives in the Wallonian region. Both these communities lives in a mixed composition in the capital called Brussels. Now there is a special condition in this nation. Though the Dutch acquires a majority throughout the nation, it is a minority in the capital Brussels. Whereas the French, which is a minority throughout the nation, gains a majority in the capital. This unequal distribution of their speaking community throughout the nation created a conflict between the two communities. Though the French speaking community was a minority, it was a relatively rich and powerful community. And this difference of distribution of the community led to a conflict between them during the 1950s and the 1960s. The conflict was accurately seen in the capital, as we know, because there was a highly unequal distribution with an 80% of French speaking community there and 20% with the Dutch speaking community, and rest of the 1% is the German speaking community. Now, to solve this problem, the Belgian leaders introduced the Belgium model of power sharing and accommodation in Belgium, or accommodation in Belgium, we can say. So, the leaders of Belgium were highly considerate towards the existence of regional differences and cultural diversities, for which they amended their constitutions 4 times between 1970 and 1993. They wanted a peaceful existence of the citizens throughout the nation. They wanted an arrangement that could allow or enable the people of different ethnic groups to live together in the nation without it getting divided. According to the amended version of the Constitution of Belgium, there will be equal representation to both the communities, that is, the Dutch and the federal French speaking ministers in the central government, and that no single community can take decisions unilaterally. Powers are to be started or shared with the state governments. Powers are to be shared with the state governments, thus, the state government are not subordinate to the central. Now, there we can see the government maintained an equality between both the communities, the Dutch speaking community and the French speaking community. It's clear that in their power sharing, they maintained the equal distribution of power between them. And for that, they even created a separate government in the capital called Brussels, which had equal representation of both the communities. Now they created a third kind of government, the community government, elected by the people belonging to one language community, Dutch, French, and German speaking. No matter where they live, this government can decide on cultural, educational, and language related issues. So we can see they really give importance to the different ethnic groups based on the linguistic lines and wanted them to maintain peacefully throughout the nation so that they can live there with their culture and gain education also at the same time peacefully. Therefore, the Belgium model might seem very complicated to us, but it actually helped to avoid any civil war or division of the nation based on the linguistic lines. So, this is how Belgium handled their conflict. Now, next, we come to the Sri Lankan story. Here, first of all, I would like to say that here we can see the problem of majoritarianism. So, in the map we can see that there are even here there are different ethnic communities. We can see in the index that the yellow is the Sinhalese and the Sri Lankan Tamil is the orange, the maroon area is of the Indian Tamil, and the small circles are of the Muslim communities. Okay, now we all know that Sri Lanka is an island nation in the South Asia region which has a diverse population and various communities, which signifies its complex ethnicity. With a majority of 74%, there are the Sinhalese speaking community, whereas the Tamil speaking community comprises of about 18%, being a minority. Yes, it's very clear from the map and from the distribution of the speaking community we can see here is that the Sinhalese were the majority and the Tamil speaking community were the minority. Now there is another division in the basically a subdivision between the Tamil speaking in the Tamil speaking community. We can see that 13% of the Tamil speaking community has Sri Lanka are the natives of Sri Lanka, and so they are called the Sri Lankan Tamils. Rest 5% are of Indian origin, and thus they are called the Indian Tamils. And rest of the 7% are of Christian community, comprising of both Tamils and the Sinhalese, and the 1% are of the Muslims. Now we come to the topic of majoritarianism. Unlike the leaders of Belgium, Sri Lankan leaders were quite inconsiderate towards the different ethnic communities around the nation. They were just biased towards the Sinhalese community, and they even tried to secure dominance over the government by the power of majority, which led to a series of majoritarian measures to establish Sinhala supremacy. The Sinhala supremacy passed an act in 1956 which recognized Sinhala as the only official language in Sri Lanka. So here we can see the Sri Lankan leaders were highly discriminated towards the Tamil speaking community, and they made Sinhalese the only official language and did not give importance to the Tamil speaking community. Only the Sinhalese applicants were preferred in the field of education and jobs. They were also discriminated towards the Tamil in the field of education and jobs. Under its new constitution, Buddhism was declared and promoted as a state religion. Majority of the people, since majority of the people in the nation are Sinhalese, and Sinhalese are maximum of Buddhist religion, they declared Buddhism as a state religion. Sri Lankan Tamils protested against these discriminations through political parties and struggles. They even demanded for the recognition of Tamil as an official language for regional autonomy. But they were repeatedly denied, and they at last demanded equality of opportunity in securing education and jobs through different political organizations, and this created a conflict with the government of Sri Lanka. They demanded an independent Tamil Elam, which means state, and they demanded the state in the northern and eastern parts of Sri Lanka. This majoritarianism issue led to a widespread conflict throughout the nation, which soon turned into a civil war. This civil war has killed many thousands of people, and many were even forced to leave the nation, and the rest lost their livelihoods. So, if we compare both the cases of Belgium and Sri Lankan government, then we will understand that they had similar problems but different solutions and obviously different consequences. In Belgium, the authority respected all the communities throughout the nation. In order to maintain peace, they even tried to solve the ethnic dispute by amending its constitution and make it more flexible to accommodate a well-managed system of power sharing. Whereas the scenario in Sri Lanka was the complete opposite of that of the Belgium. The Sri Lankan authority disregarded the minority community and acquired a Sinhala supremacy at the center, which created a widespread conflict among the communities, which ended up with a civil war, creating a havoc in the nation. Thus, power sharing must be done in a correct form. Why is power sharing desirable? We need to know. The reasons here are prudential and moral. First of all, when we talk about prudential reasons, some questions might arise in our mind, like what are the correct form we can use for power sharing, and why we need to use it, and what will be its consequences if we use it. So basically, power sharing can avoid conflicts or reduce its possibility among different communities in the nations. It ensures political stability. It maintains equality where the majority cannot rule over the minority. Now, the moral reason is that it's a real spirit of democracy. If there is the power sharing, then there is democracy. This is the moral reason of power sharing. Now, we come to the last topic of our chapter, that is the different forms of power sharing. Now we can see in the chart that there are 4 different categories or forms: horizontal, vertical, social groups, political parties, and pressure groups. Now, what is the horizontal division of powers? In this division of powers, the power is shared among different organs of the government as legislature, executive, and judiciary. If we take the example of India, we can see that we have these organs: legislature, executive, and judiciary here, where each of the organ keeps a check on the other. So it believes in a separation of powers among these organs, where each organ keeps a check on the other, so that no organ exercises unlimited power. And this whole concept of keeping a check on the other is a concept of checks and balances. Since it maintains a balance in the system of a government, it is the concept of checks and balances. This system assures that the democracy can be expanded. So, next we come to the vertical division of power sharing. The vertical division of power sharing, or the vertical form of power sharing, is that the power is shared among the different levels of the government. Now, by levels, we mean the union government, state government, and the local level governments. This form of government is usually known as federal form of government. We can see this in India also. In India, there is a federal form of government where the power is divided or shared among the central government, state government, and the local level governments. So here we can see that since the power is shared or distributed from higher to lower levels of government, it is known as a vertical form of government, vertical form of power sharing in the government. Next is the social groups. If we take the example of Belgium, there the community government can be taken as a model for explaining this social group category of power sharing. There we can see that the social group arrangement based on the linguistic lines, that is the community government, helped in sharing the powers among the different ethnic communities in the nation. Another good example is the reserve constituencies in the Indian government, where the reserve constituencies of the Indian government was formed for the socially unprivileged and weaker sections of the society and also for the women. Basically, it gives security to the minority community in the nation. Now, we come to the last form of power sharing, political parties and the pressure groups. Sometimes political parties and pressure groups can also make power sharing system in the government of a nation. Now, for example, often in a democratic country of multi-political parties where two or more parties contest elections and form an alliance if they are elected, and this form of government is known as the coalition government. In the coalition government, they share the powers among them. And for an example, we can take the Indian alliance of NDA. NDA is an alliance formed in India with the many political parties, many small political parties coming together. Another example is of interest groups. Now, these interest groups, we need to know, are formed by the community of traders, maybe, or by the community of businessmen, etc. Either through their participation in governmental communities or influence on the decision making process, they acquire a share of power in the government also. So these were the different forms. Now, from this whole story of Belgium and Sri Lanka, we got to know that not only power sharing is important, but it must be done in a correct manner so that it does not ends up in a conflicting manner in a nation. So power sharing must be done with an equal distribution of power and not unequal distribution of power. As we could see that in Belgium, because of the equal distribution of power, they did not face any sort of civil strife. But on the other hand, Sri Lanka had to face it because they created a dominant government over the minorities, which was the main reason for forming the conflict there. So, this is how we are concluding today. Thank you so much.